Hello and welcome to the VRCade Podcast. Thank you everyone for joining. In this podcast, we're going to talk about the VRCade industry and generally what's going on. And to my talk a little bit about how we first met. Yeah,
Yep, sure.
yeah,
Okay. So I guess I'll start with a bit of background to
yeah.
how sort of VRilliant got started. So my name's Roland. I'm one of the founders of VRilliant Studios and VRilliant Arenas. And our story actually began around 2013 or so when we originally started building escape rooms. And then from escape rooms, we decided that, escape rooms are a lot of work to build, and it's a lot of work to sort of create the actual physical rooms. So when time came around to sort of update the existing rooms that we had for a couple of years at that point, we thought, what could be a cooler version on how we could more easily make sure that we have the content that's most exciting for our customers. And that's kind of how VR came into play. And that's actually how we opened up VRilliant Arenas, first in Zurich and then in Lucerne.
Okay. And what is your position in VRilliant?
I am one of the founders, but it's sort of I'm probably the person that's putting out fires the most in the different areas of that need my attention. Um, yeah, it's kind of in German. There's this really nice term. It's kind of like Mädchen für alles, which is just the girl for everything. Hi,
Ah,
Elena. I'm
and
Really nice
and
presentation.
Susanna.
how about you, Chan?
So I first started out as a game master for Brilliant and also for the aforementioned escape room.
Mm-hmm.
And nowadays I am responsible for the VR kits that we both have. And I think I was one of the first employees, or I like to think so. So I'm not sure on that front, but I am also now up and running for 2.5 years at Brilliant.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, looking for the arcade, so basically an arcade owner, still from time to time a game master, and overall just a VR gamer myself.
Okay. And how did you get started in the industry?
Well, I had Vive, HTC Vive Pro, I think was my first headset that I owned, like, I don't know, now 8-9 years ago. I don't
Yeah.
know how old that headset nowadays is, but time is running. So that was my first experience in VR, and from then on I was hooked anyway. And during my studies, which had nothing to do with gaming or whatever, I studied chemistry. I came along this great job description of being a game master, and from then on I started out at Brilliant.
And I think it's worth mentioning here that the only reason Brilliant runs as well as it does, and we have such a good name, at least in Switzerland, is probably because of the work that Chan does. So I just think that's worth pointing out.
Yeah, Chan.
Usually not one man's work, but thank you for the kind words.
Yeah, Chan helps me out a lot as well. So yeah, good job, mate. Good job.
So, Serge, how did you actually find us? I mean, you.
How did I find you guys? I saw your game on Steam, I think it was, and I think I reached out to you and just said, like, look at your game, tell me more about it, kind of thing. And then somehow I ended up kind of helping you test it, right? Yeah. So I was helping you guys test the game. I ended up in the lobby with you, and we were playing and had a good laugh. And I think what happened was we were wrapping up, and I was just asking about your team and how many people are in your team, just out of curiosity kind of thing. And then I just thought, oh, let me just ask if he's looking for kind of salespeople, and that's so I asked, and then you were like, let me get back to you, and here we are. Yeah, that's basically how I got involved. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's actually a really cool story, because I don't think either of us would have expected, sort of from our first interaction onward, for everything to turn out the way it did now with us working together. But yeah, no, it's a very, very cool series of coincidences.
Yeah, it's strange how things work out, So I've been with you guys for a couple of months now, having fun, and yeah, it's all good. It's all good. What about? I mean, should we start by talking about the general idea behind VR arcades, what they are, and how they work? Do you want to delve into that a little bit?
Sure. So I think if we look at the broader VR market, right, you generally differentiate between the at-home VR market and sort of the out-of-home VR market, which is more or less the VR arcade market. And I mean, with the exception of a short pandemic in between, I think the VR arcade market is very much living its renaissance, because VR is in this sweet spot where there are some very avid early adopters who are using VR at home, but there's just also a lot of people who have heard about VR but haven't ever really tried it yet, or aren't sure if they want to buy a VR headset and the whole setup for themselves, and instead want to go somewhere and play outdoors, and that's where the VR arcades come in. And the incredible thing to have seen since, I think, 2016, 2017 is just how quickly just both the technology and the arcades are developing. And I think we'll get to that a bit later as well. But to see sort of the in innovation management, there's a concept called dominant design, which is to what's the perfect final design of any specific product. So for the smartphone you had, if you compare all the phones that came before the smartphone, now all the phones look the same. It's usually one rectangular block. But it took years and decades to find that single dominant design with, I guess, you had the Motorola Razr in between, you had sort of the really old Nokias. And it's that dominant design that VR hasn't found yet, but is going through really quickly. So you look at arcades that opened up 2016, 2017 were, but even us in 2020, we're using backpack PCs, we're using outside-in tracking. And now if you look at sort of the latest headsets, it's all inside-out tracking, but still able to share the map with multiple players. And that also opens up a lot of new doors for arcades as well.
Yeah, definitely. And how about you, Chun? What are your thoughts on the VR industry? How did you get started in VR? What was your first experience?
As I mentioned, my first experience was with that pretty old VR headset now, which is the Vive Pro.
Yeah.
HTC Vive Pro. And from then on, I mean, it made a really big step forward until now. If you look at the home market, but also at the arcade market, as Roland mentioned, from like backpack PCs to now standalone PC headsets with via streaming, and I think it just became so much more comfortable to play for us, for the customers, for everyone involved in VR. And me myself, I also have a racing rig at home, which I use for the VR racing games, which is pretty crazy and so much fun. So I think VR will only go upwards from here. And as Roland mentioned, the renaissance for the arcades is also really nice and really good for the industry. And also for, Apple will also join the VR market more or less. So let's see how that one will go. I mean, it will just get crazier, and hopefully we will be the ones that will be profiting from all these steps towards that right design that Roland mentioned at the beginning
Yeah.
with the phones. Yeah.
What was your actual first experience though? Like the first game you played?
I think it was a zombie shooter. Not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure it was one of the zombie shooters.
I was actually really skeptical about VR getting into it. And I think this is still true for a lot of people today, that they can't imagine how good VR actually is without having tried it.
Yeah.
Especially because our other founder, Laszlo, he was arguing that we should really take a look at VR because VR is going to be great. And I was just a cliche skeptic of, I'm sure it's not good. I'm sure it's just really difficult to use. And the first game I played was Half-Life Alyx, which just set an incredibly high benchmark and completely blew me away too. So it was basically, I didn't believe in VR at all. I played 20 minutes of Half-Life Alyx, and I was sold to, yes, okay, let's do this. And that's kind of all it took.
Yeah, for me, it was the PlayStation VR one. It was, what's it called? Like the shark experience when you go into the shark cage. Did you ever do that? Yeah, they drop you into the ocean. It's called Ocean Descent, I think it is. And yeah, it's kind of a horror thing, like because the shark starts attacking you. And yeah, I have to admit, I did put a few people in that and just tell them it was like an aquarium. Yeah, that was naughty of me, but they enjoyed it. But yeah, since then, I've owned various headsets from the Quest 2, Pico, Valve Index, PlayStation VR 2. So yeah, been addicted really. I play a little bit of non-VR games, but not that often. Not that often, to be honest.
You're actually one of the few people I've heard of who went from having a VR headset on the PlayStation and then switching to sort of the Oculus Quest and the PC VR based headsets.
Yeah. Oh really?
For playing, yeah. Usually I heard, I don't know, I heard it the other way around. But what's your favorite headset at the moment for playing games? Any games?
For me, the Index is old, but it's still my favorite because I've had my best experiences in it. The PlayStation VR 2 is a great headset, and I've had like issues with it, so I'm returning it back and forth. But like games like Resident Evil Village are so good. Like it looks, the graphics and the gameplay, and also Horizon. There's so many great games on there, and it's just one wire. You know, when it comes to the PC VR stuff, it's sometimes can be a little bit finicky getting everything to run properly in general. But you know, the Index is still pretty. Once it's plugged in, it works with everything. Yeah. What headsets do you own, Chan?
I own a Quest 2, Pico 4, and also PSVR 2.
Yeah.
And in the office, I also use the Valve Index from time to time in the Vive Focus 3. Yeah, Roland.
We have all of these in the office. Like we work with them.
Hey, I'm sorry I started before. I mean, I was the first one getting the Pico 4 headset from our side, so...
Fair enough.
That is also the one that I use the most at the moment. I mean, it's connected to my laptop and the racing rig and everything else. So I don't think it's the most comfortable one because of the face masks. So if I play for 1-2 hours, it really hurts. It starts to hurt on your face. But if you change the face mask, I think it's one of the better headsets.
I do like the pancake lenses. Lenses.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess before we get too deep into the details of the specific headsets, gentlemen, why are we here today? Why did we decide to start this today?
To kind of share our experiences that we've had, obviously in VR, and just talk about VR arcades, how they work. So not a lot of people know about how VR arcades work. and like the different licensing platforms and the different packages you get, things like that. So yeah, I think that's part of it.
Yeah, and then I think another part of it, or at least the goal, or my goal would be to then also get different experts on here from sort of
Yeah.
different areas of sort of the VR arcade industry, to talk with them a bit about what they're seeing develop, what they've seen work really well, and John is also our in-house subject matter expert when it comes to VR arcade operations and how to run an arcade well. And it's just sort of getting some of the knowledge out there of what's worked really well for us and what we've had quite a bit of success with when it comes to arcade operations. But also kind of going through what didn't work out at all for us, where we took wrong turns, went
Yeah.
into partnerships that didn't work out as we originally planned them. Hopefully to help others avoid it. And I think that's kind of the goal overall.
Yeah, because there has been a lot of, because you're the first game that you guys worked on, right? You did come across a lot of hurdles, and you definitely have learned a lot from it. So that'd be interesting to share that with the community as well. And it would be great to eventually get some guests on there who work in arcades, who work on the different platforms, and give kind of more information. Yeah, so that'd be really good. Do you want to talk about the different types of arcades, like the different like closed franchises and things like that?
Sure. So that's kind of our view on the market a
Yeah.
bit is right. You have probably you can probably differentiate. So one big differentiator that we see is an arcade a free roam arcade, or
Yeah.
is it a room scale arcade?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Most all games that are made for at home play are room scale. For free roam, you really need a larger space. In our case, we have up to 100 square meters, but I now just sort of also rapid development of technology. I think it's a French company called EVA who have up to 1,000 square meters where people can freely run around in VR and actually play on the full play area and see
Yeah.
each other where the people actually are. So that's kind of probably one of the, I guess, conceptual differences, although you sometimes also see them side by side, where a single arcade would have sort of box or room scale
Mm-hmm.
booths and also have a free roam area that they would then charge or position as a premium product. So that's a bit on the kind of conceptual level, but then we also differentiate between sort of, there's closed franchises such as zero latency or True VR, where essentially if you choose to open an arcade with them, you'd go to them, sign a franchising agreement. You get most likely some form of geographical exclusivity, but they provide the technology in part. So I think for True VR systems, it's just kind of a proprietary free roam VR setup that they're using, but also the title and the games that you're able to use and that they want you to push. And then you also have the more open arcades where the arcade doesn't belong to any specific franchise. It's more, I guess, sort of like we did, that we thought it would be cool to open a VR arcade. Why don't we do it? And then we kind of just went about figuring out which games work, which don't work. And then I guess there's kind of a third layer to this, which is just, and this is also a bit on when it comes to philosophy. You have arcades who choose to really have a gigantic games library, so 200 plus games that people can come in and play. In my opinion, that can be a bit overwhelming for guests, especially for first-time VR players who come in and you open up a library of 200 games. Or the alternative is really kind of a smaller set of handpicked titles with which you try to cover the different customer segments that would come to your arcade. So the classics are obviously, some kind of zombie shooter in there, but also escape rooms, puzzling games that are more family-friendly, child-friendly, and you want to make sure that you have all the bases covered. but really with the best selection that you can find.
Yes, I have seen some arcades. I've been on the websites, and there's pages and pages and pages of games, and it's like, how do people choose? It's like like it's crazy. Like how many selections? But then I see some with just like 3 games, and it's like the complete opposite. So
And I think this is where the game masters actually come in. So
Yeah.
whoever's in the arcade, right? They're probably the single most important person when it comes to the customer experience of anyone who goes into the arcade, because
Yeah.
yeah, like you mentioned, if someone comes in, you put a headset on them, here's 200 games. It's probably not quite as good an experience as if you feel that someone's guiding you to have you played VR before, or is this your first time playing? If it's your first time playing, what kind of game would you like to play? And you sort of help them find what it is that they're actually looking for.
Yeah. So it's like a quick qualification to check if they've played before and what kind of games they like. Because I did a bit of mystery shopping, and some people did that on the phone. Some people didn't really. I think it's quite important to qualify people before you put them in the game, even if they're inquiring on the phone. So yeah, like what the exact questions, what kind of games you played, have you tried VR before, and also things like if people tend to get motion sick, even if they're in like car sick and things like that. Do you think that's related to getting motion sickness as well, if you're prone to being car sick and things like that?
Could very well be. But
Yeah.
I mean that okay. It's something I didn't mention, but I think this is something that sort of probably everyone who operates an arcade has come across, which
Yeah.
is your selection of games is narrowed down by essentially what doesn't make your customers motion sick, because if they get motion sick, they're just not gonna have a great time.
Right.
And this is somewhere where I have a bit of a bone to pick with sort of VR roller coasters, which just kind of shake people around and pretend to take them on a roller coaster ride, because I have yet to meet someone who tried one of these, got off it, and thought, hey, this was great, I want to do it again. Mostly people are completely sick and they write VR off and are just to come in and say, if you talk to them, it's like, no, I tried one of those roller coaster things. I'm never trying VR again. And kind of on the other side, there are good experiences though that are worth trying.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, we also had some few arcade games that we now don't offer anymore because of exactly that, right? When people get motion sick, then we tend to not offer them anymore because we had bad experiences. And we had some games where you had to teleport really quickly from one position to another, so people got sick there. Or when you're on a ship that moves up and down without you doing anything, that's also not really the best experience. And yeah, these kind of games were a little bit more rough for first-time VR users.
And I think the thing about motion sickness is that it does actually get better with time. So the more VR you play, the less prone you're going to be to get motion sick, and the more insane things I guess you can do in VR, right? The problem there is that usually the customer segment that comes to VR arcades, right? Your customers are going to be either first-time players, or I'd say mostly first-time players, or people who visited your arcade are a huge fan of what you do and come back multiple times because they enjoyed themselves so much. And I mean, that's obviously where you then want to get your customers.
Yeah. Come to think of it, from the games that I've seen, nothing has been like a roller coaster or anything like that that people offer. So I have seen the machines though. Do you know the all-in-one machines that you get? Those look pretty cool as well.
I need to be honest, I haven't actually tried one yet.
Yeah.
I do think they look really cool, but to really be able to judge, I'd need to test one.
Yeah.
The other interesting thing, especially when it comes to motion sickness, is that there's actually, right, on the one hand, it's really a product decision. On the other hand, it's also a design decision, essentially, of how something is created. So what game developers noticed a while back was that you don't get motion sick if you teleport around in a game. Smooth locomotion, people do get motion sick. But if you combine smooth locomotion with an arm movement of the controllers like this, people no longer get motion sick. I'm not 100% sure to why this works, but it does work. Also for me, who's especially prone to getting motion sick. So that's actually really cool to see.
Yeah. What game made you the most motion sick then?
The most motion sick.
Definitely one of
to
the
be honest
roller
with you,
coasters.
I mean, anything that, basically anything, almost anything with smooth locomotion, I'm not great with. One of my first VR experiences was after Half-Life Alyx was Richie's plank experience, and at some point you get a jetpack and you're able to fly all around the place.
Yeah.
So there I was able to make myself really sick. And the other one was Google Earth, where you're able to fly around different places. Also made me incredibly sick very quickly.
How about you, Chan? Do you get motion sick? Did you ever have it when you started, or?
When I started out, yes. There were some occasions, especially the roller coaster ones, and not sure which other game there was, but I think there was some other one. But I really adjust really quickly, and I think that's the great part of VR. You can really get used to it, and then you don't feel it as strongly anymore. And at one point, you don't feel it ever. So I also had a few issues with smooth locomotion at the beginning. I know that, but after a few hours you just get used to it because your brain then recognizes what's happening, and it's just enjoyment from then on. But yeah, it takes a little time to get used to it, and that's the tricky part for arcade owners, to get the customers maybe back again for a second time so that they can show them something different and have another great experience without getting seasick or whatever.
Yeah. I think Paradise Decay, he's got a really good following in the VR side of things on YouTube. He is watching, and he just put a comment saying Roblox was the first game in VR to make him motion sick in 5 years.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, have you guys experienced Roblox before, or?
I haven't gotten around to playing it yet.
Not in VR, no.
Yeah, I think I need to give it a go because I like doing crazy stuff.
But it's quite new, actually. Like I would
is.
have expected that just with again game design and design to make sure that people don't get motion sick coming as far as it did, that they would have paid attention to it.
Yeah,
In our that Susanna just threw in that so the Europa Park is a huge sort of like Disneyland, but in Germany, and they have a roller coaster that's completely in VR, and it's a bit of a tangent, but it's still interesting to mention. The reason that it works actually is because the headset and the movements you see in the headset are synced with the actual movements that you do on the roller coaster. So you're riding a real roller coaster with a VR headset on. And that's what really helps you. I mean, probably the only reason why it works, that you don't get motion sick. And what I then found out retrospectively was that they actually used it in two versions. So one version was that you can do the roller coaster in VR, or they have the same exact track, same exact roller coaster without VR, with a completely different theme. And the only way you notice that you've been on that same ride before is because you occasionally see a cart pass with a bunch of people wearing headsets. But it's done quite nicely.
Yeah, the VR, there's a lot of VR arcades popping up, which is it's growing, isn't it? Pretty fast, VR arcades, because there's always, I always see like one's coming soon or that have just opened. So it's slowly getting more kind of mainstream.
It definitely is. I think just with the pandemic, VR arcades had an incredibly hard time. For a while, but I mean, I think you're talking to VR arcades almost more than I am, and it's really just exciting to just today I talked to VR arcade in Leipzig, Germany, who they opened up 2 months ago, or also another one that opened up in Switzerland a couple months ago. So I think the overall trend is definitely sort of bouncing back to seeing a lot of new VR arcades opening.
I mean, in Switzerland, we had like 4 VR arcades like 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. Now we are at 7 or 8. Correct me if I'm wrong, Roland. I think you're
No, that
knowledge
sounds
there is
about
good.
right. But
I
but I
mean,
think we have to keep in mind that that's a uniquely Swiss perspective from
no,
a tiny country where 8 seems like a high number.
no, I know, but it is still. I mean, it's doubled now. So I mean, that's not for most countries, of course, but still, we also see an upwards trend, which is pretty nice.
Yeah, in the UK as well, there's new ones popping up all over the place here. Like, there's been a couple I've spoken to, and that they're interested in the game and stuff like that. But then a couple of them have just gone all out and bought in those machines I was talking about. So it's the built-in VR arcade machines, and it's got set games and things like that, which is pretty crazy. And they're pretty expensive as well. There's a guy in the UK that actually sold his house to buy all the kit and open a VR arcade after he was on holiday and just gave it a go. And then he was like, he saw how much fun his stepson was having, I think it was. And now he's in the process of, opening a VR arcade, which is crazy. That was in the news and everything. Yeah.
We also got a comment from Synthesis. We are saying the more arcades, the better. So yeah.
I mean, yes.
Agreed.
Do you want to explain to people about Synthesis and the different platforms and things?
I mean, me? Yeah, sure,
Yeah.
I can. So for VR arcades, there are some different platforms like Steam that most of us know from gaming on PCs, right? And there are basically Synthesis VR, Springboard VR, RV VR, Lucian VR, Iveport, Steam Cafe. Did I miss anyone? Please
No,
correct me if I miss
I
anyone.
mean,
Not that I hurt anyone's
sure that we
feelings here,
did.
but there are a bunch of different ones, and they also do not offer the same stuff. And
Yeah.
people are trying to get their own ways going somehow, and just trying to find that the one thing that sticks. So it's really great competition out there. That's, I think, also really important to get the market going.
But I think, so probably for anyone who isn't in sort of operating VR arcades, the background is that as an arcade, right, you're not allowed to commercially license any sort of games that you'd have over Steam, right? Just because you buy a game on Steam doesn't mean that you're also allowed to sort of commercially use that legally. And that's where sort of platforms like Synthesis VR, Springboard VR come in to kind of allow arcades to commercially license their content. And instead of having to individually find each piece of content you want to offer in an arcade that you open, you have just all the content from the developers in one single marketplace where you don't have to be worried about any kind of licensing and legal issues.
Yes, because you can do like direct licensing as well, can't you? Where you get it from each of the game developers. Is that right? That's another option, isn't it? But then it's all kind of, if you use a platform, say Synthesis, it's all in one place. You don't have to worry about all the different launches and stuff like that. It's all in one, so that it does have its benefits.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then there are arcades out there that really prefer to license their content directly, or develop all their content in-house, or in the case of the closed franchises that we talked about, right, all the content is already kind of part of the franchise package that you'd start with. But I think the sort of licensing platforms are just really providing a huge service to arcades in general.
Yeah. So what are the biggest games then at the moment in the arcade VR arcades, would you say?
I mean, I think Chun, you're probably the most knowledgeable on which games which games we offer that are probably played the most.
Before I come to that one. VR Escape Reality is saying Steam VR is a pain, lol. Not quite sure what is trying to refer there, but also welcome to the podcast. Yes, I mean, we offer, of course, our own games as well. So Rotten Apple is definitely one that we offer the most and that people enjoy the most because here in our arcade we can offer it in free roam. And that's one topic that we had right at the beginning, right? The free roam versus room scale arcades. And I personally, and also many others, think that free roam games are much more fun because you're just walking around yourself without any teleportation, any smooth locomotion, whatever. And that's just so much more fun and so much more immersive than the other options. And besides that, we also offer a lot of escape room games. And I think the one that is played the most is Alice. And that is maybe because of the name, because people know Alice in Wonderland and associated with that. Of course, it is based on that story. And yeah, that is the other game that gets played the most.
Yeah, I've heard of Alice. Alice pops up quite a lot. That is quite popular. People do mention that.
But it really is, right? I mean, I think from a branding and marketing perspective, it was a genius move to just, right? If you show the same person Alice as a game, or I don't know, Magical Forest Adventure as a game, even though the content is the same, people are still going to choose Alice just because it rings a bell to what this is.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of recognizability is really great.
And it's also really smart because of that song, Alice. We had a few occasions where people were coming into our arcade and they were like, Alice, Alice, who the F is Alice?
Yeah.
So when they play that game, they are also singing that song, which is so nice and pretty smart from the guys that named their game Alice.
Okay. So I guess, John, moving to sort of experiences that you've had when operating our arcades, I'd be curious to. I don't think it's a huge secret to anyone starting a VR arcade. The first couple months starting off, you run into technical issues nonstop, and this is just every single game when you have customers there, and it's just completely gut wrenching because something isn't working. And I'm guessing for VRS, you also had some problems with Steam VR. Something isn't working for a customer, and they're there. Their time is running out. You have a game booked afterwards. You're trying to fix it as fast as possible. What do you think helped us there, or helped you there from an operations standpoint? Because I think especially in the last year and a half, we've been really quite stable.
Yeah, oh boy, the technical issues that we had at the beginning, so many. And I mean, one thing is time, because over time it could fix like all of the issues. Some are software related, some are hardware related, and you have to find them out one by one, and that needs time. So time is probably an issue, and the other one is just being in a dialogue with the customers. We offered them some kind of deals like, hey, it didn't work out this time, let's come back at another time, and it's on the house, of course. You don't have to pay anything. Just come back, have fun, and then we can prove again that we can make it work. Because we knew, right, it is just one of those days. Because on the most days it works, but then every now and then you get one of those days that nothing works. So you have to deal with the customers, and mostly we were just saying, come back at another time. We know that we can get the stuff running, and then it's on the house, and you will have a great time. That's what we can offer, and I think no one ever denied that offer. So that worked really well. And otherwise, if people didn't have time because they were from afar and they were saying, yeah, but we had like 2-hour drive, we cannot afford to do that again in the next 2 months, and we are not sure if it will really work. So if we have that kind of customers, then we just cut the prices. and that's how we handle
But
stuff.
I mean, I think the other thing that works quite well, and this is actually something that I noticed when we were still using Springboard VR, right? The place where you don't want to have your customer when you're trying to figure out technical issues is that they have the headset on, but everything is completely black, and they can't see anything. And what I thought was actually quite well done was that Springboard VR had this launcher kind of menu where it was just a 3D environment. But the beauty of this 3D environment, which you couldn't do anything, but the beauty of it was that people were standing in this 3D environment and they were having a blast because it was their first time trying VR and they were completely immersed in just walking around this set. And that gave us a bit of additional breathing time to fix any technical issues that we might have had. And something else that I think worked quite well for us actually was that if we had some technical issues in the beginning and didn't have a game booked right after, we'd try and extend the slot to make sure that people still had enough time to play.
Yeah.
And also, before I continue, Yours Escape Reality also wrote again that Rotten Up is one of the few games that I don't have any Steam issues. So thank you for that. That's great to hear.
Yay!
And to get back on topic, what also really helps is we have a fridge in our arcade, which the customers can have free drinks. So
Nice.
that was also really nice. And if we have some more time and the people are not stressed, then we can say, hey, give us like 20 minutes, half an hour, play on the Nintendo Switch that we have also in the lobby, play some Mario Kart, we will fix this, and then usually we also really fixed it, and the people just had a great time. So something like that is really helpful to have in your arcade.
Yeah.
And taking maybe sort of going back to sort of what so there's kind of I don't know if you call it user experience or customer experience theory, but it's called the Kano model. And in the Kano model, right, you have features that are, these are core features. If this doesn't work, your customers aren't going to be happy with the service that you're providing. Right, and that's just that, they can arrive, the game works, they get their amount of playtime that they paid for, they can pay and they can, by any means necessary, and they can leave. I guess that's kind of your standard set. But the really interesting thing is that there's also you have these subset of features that really delight customers. So that's and like this originally comes from sort of the Airbnb founders who were looking into, right, kind of what would an 11-star check-in to any kind of Airbnb look like, right? What's the 11-star experience that the check-in is so good that these customers then want to go out and tell everyone else what a great time they had? Is this that they have a little champagne and a handwritten card that awaits them when they get into the apartment? And they just kind of started thinking in this direction. And I think that's where, for one of the things, Chun, that you already mentioned is the drinks that we just have as complimentary drinks, which always seems to surprise people. But we kept it that way because it surprises people. And then the other one that we did for the summer is just offer people an ice cream after the game. And it costs 30 to 40 cents for an ice cream, but people don't expect it, and it's a hot summer day, and they're just really happy that they got an ice cream. So I think these kind of little delight features are the ones that can help push word of mouth.
Yeah, that sticks in people's heads. And I mean, for retention, most of them are gonna come back, because I think most arcades don't offer things like that, like free drink. And I mean, have you heard of that in anywhere else that does that?
I'm sure it exists. Off the top of my head, I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
But it's John, do you? I don't know.
I'm not sure if people do it, but I'm pretty sure that people will do it. And yeah, we cannot be the only ones doing it. So
No.
I haven't heard it. But
Yeah.
it wouldn't surprise me. Let's put it like that.
What's the most common feedback you get in the arcade, Chan? I guess because you were your games master as well before, weren't you? So you probably know.
Yes. On the top of my head, I would say that we get complimented most on our game masters. They really do a great work, and I mean it's really our top priority to be there for the customers, to help them with the gear, with the games, to always be there when they have questions, and not be just in our private space and leave them to themselves. But if we are needed, we are there. And as I mentioned, there's some free stuff at the end of a booking. There is an introduction at the beginning, so people are always in contact with a game master. And I think that the top comment would be that game masters are great, really helpful, really nice, and yeah, I think that's, besides Rotten Apple, which we also offer, should be the most commented review that we get.
Yeah. What I think also helps there is a bit the introduction that we do, which means that usually when people arrive, we sit them down in the little lobby area that we have, and then on the screen we really walk them through a short 5-7 minute introduction tops on what they're going to expect, and it just makes the whole interaction feel a bit more personal, I guess, that, you know, hey, you arrived, and then we're here to kind of guide you through what's going to be happening in the next 60 minutes and what you need to pay attention to.
Yeah, I spoke to an arcade in Australia, and there he was like, the games masters are with them every step of the way, like literally, and they even play games with them, and it's really really popular. Like to have that personalized experience as opposed to, I don't know, some sweaty teenagers just being like, "Here's your headset, you know, here's your game, just get started," you know, because like you need to have that personal touch, because people are probably nervous as well at the same time, like trying VR for the first time and not having experienced it. So I think the personal touch makes a massive difference. Yeah.
Yeah, and it can be overwhelming. We also had a few occasions where people were like, "No, that's too much for me. It's too real." So having a person right there on site and helping them out with these kind of situations also really helps, making them still have a great experience.
Yeah. Whose idea was the ice cream?
I think John's.
Yeah, it was mine.
He's proud of that one.
And I am, yeah, not gonna lie.
Right. Okay. Quickly to just because Rafizo asked in the chat whether we removed height calibration in the new Rotten Apple update. Yes, that's now gone. Height calibration is done automatically in the background, just to have one step less that the customers actually need to do.
Nice.
That's
Yeah.
also really great for our kids, right? So not too much work themselves. So if you just can boot up something and it works, that would be the ideal case. Usually it doesn't always happen, but when it does, it's like the best experience that you can offer. Boot it up, it is just self-explanatory and it just works.
Yeah, I think as well the game needs to be designed around the games master as well, right? To make it as smooth as possible. And I've heard people say certain different games aren't that smooth, and I think it's really important, because if a games master finds a game hard or annoying to set up for people, they're not going to recommend it. So it's really important to get that right.
And the people or the customers are going to have just less fun. I think so to a certain extent, one of the roles that the game master has is to minimize the time between customers arriving in the arcade and being able to enjoy themselves in VR. And this means also going through the tutorials and understanding the game and what they're doing in VR. So how can you achieve the shortest possible time between someone comes in the door and they're playing VR and having a good time?
Yeah.
One of the other topics that I wanted to touch on just from our operations are actually second-party platforms that we work with. John, I know you have quite a bit of experience dealing with them. Second-party platforms are essentially, or what we have locally are platforms that kind of sell team events to companies directly, or advertise for team events, or advertise discounts for specific services.
Or just
This
coupons
kind
in
of thing.
general.
Yeah. And yeah, actually, Chan, I'd be curious to what would you say that's working well? Is that something that it makes sense to do? Is that something that you wouldn't necessarily recommend? What's your take?
I mean, on the team event front, I'm not really sure at the moment. We started working with some of them 2 or 3 months ago, so we started pretty fresh, and I haven't had any recommendations from them at the moment. So we don't have any team events that got to offered to us from their websites. Not sure on that front, but generally from coupon sites, we really get a lot of games in the arcade, and I think that's a great deal for them and for us. We can save some marketing capital, and yeah, they just get a little bit of the money that we would earn, and it's a great deal for both sides.
Yeah. But I think that and you mentioned a really important aspect there, is that the commission that they take, it really shouldn't be too high, and we've had this where yeah, it just they ask that we make sure that we have a 30 to 40% discount on the games that we're offering, but then on top of that they want to take a 30 to 40%, or I think it was a 30% commission of any revenue that we make through them, which, right, if you run the numbers, you just see that it makes no sense whatsoever to keep doing that. And I know that we once made the mistake to be part of a Black Friday deal where if you brought the right kind of game, we
The
were
Black
actually
Friday 21 deal.
Black Friday 2021 deal where we were
Mhm.
losing money per game bought on over that platform, which I think when it comes to bad business decisions we made is probably one of the most prominent ones.
Yeah.
But also worth mentioning here is that these rates are in fact negotiable. So if you are working with a second party platform, and I think probably the one that works the best for us are the ones that actually offer not just coupons, but really gifts or gift ideas, especially around, you know, Christmas time, Halloween. We actually make quite a bit of sales through them. And I just think that from an arcade standpoint, it's important that you also negotiate their commission rates, because it is possible, and these aren't fixed rates. So the worst thing that can happen if you ask them is that they say, no, we're not going to change our rate, and then you can still agree to the same deal, or they did change their rate, and then you're in a slightly better position.
Yeah, I would also definitely recommend to negotiate, because I think the rates that we got offered at the beginning, they kind of hurt, because they were, yeah, a little bit high, and now we could negotiate it to a little lower commission rate, which is pretty nice for us, and it still works out for them. And if we can open a second location like we did now, then both sides profit again. So yeah, please negotiate.
Nice. And what about the different kinds of hardware that are used in the VR arcades? Like the different headsets and the backpacks and things like that.
I mean, a modern arcade now, I don't think they use backpacks anymore. I think it's all just with streamable headsets. So like the Quest 2, the Vive Focus 3, and whatever may come there.
I mean, I'd even go so far that it really depends. It doesn't even have to be a headset that supports streaming. You see, and it makes sense, but you do see a lot of arcades popping up where it's just purely standalone experiences that are available on the Quest, for example, or on the Pico, and that's kind of the library that they offer. And I don't remember the name, but even there's actually dedicated content licensing platforms focused on licensing standalone titles only.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've got.
generally,
Come.
I think it's really a hard topic to, you want to offer something in your arcade that you cannot have at home, basically. So when you're just offering the standalone library, I think that's not really worth for an arcade, but I might be wrong, I'm not sure. But in my opinion, in your arcade, you should offer something that people cannot just buy at home and play it instantly. So if you have streamable devices with a really good PC, and then you can play games that people on a standalone headset cannot play, that might be worth going to an arcade, and that should be your draw. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not sure about the standalone headsets, but yeah, topic for discussion, I guess.
Yeah, because I have seen, going back to the arcades that have hundreds of games. A lot of them are available on Steam. I did notice that. Then I have seen arcades that just have games that are not available on Steam. Like there's some, like the Alice game you can't get on Steam, and that does look really cool. I did try my first VR arcade experience, shall we say?
So how'd that go?
So I'm in just outside kind of London, and there are specific games I wanted to try, and most of them were in different locations. So I thought, oh, let me give this guy a try. It's like a mobile arcade, and he pulled up in his little people carrier, and he had a big flight.
That's a pretty cool concept, though.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. He had a big like a flight case, and he wheeled it up, and he opened it up, and it had 4 PCs in there, and he had 4 routers, and he had 4 Pico 3s, I think it was. And this is in my right here where I am now, in my VR space, and yeah, it was it was a weird experience, and but yeah, it was my first ever time in the VR arcade, and then so I think we played Arizona, Private Property, Propagation, and another game. And it was weird, like because I've been like into VR for quite a while and doing live streams and testing games and stuff like that. It's weird to just have a 30-minute limit, you know, to play a game.
Yep.
It was so weird. I was like, that's half an hour? It goes so quickly. But I get it because it's kind of like a lot of people, like we said, it's their first time in VR, so they're probably kind of You can put a timer on it, but yeah, it was fun just flicking through some different games. So it's a good idea, though. It's a good business idea to do that. He does stag parties and kids parties and stuff. So yeah.
But I mean, I think the 30-minute, but I mean probably the 1 hour limit for someone who's playing VR for the first time. VR is pretty overwhelming. Like from what I can tell from our customers in the arena who just don't have as much experience with it, is they're pretty tired. They're pretty exhausted after having played for an hour, and need a bit of a break to just sort of also process, especially if they've seen VR for the first time. To what have I just experienced?
I was surprisingly knackered. Now that you mention it, I was tired after it. Yeah. Now that you mention it, yeah, it's weird, very strange, but
on the mobile VR front, sorry, go ahead.
No, carry on.
On the mobile VR front, I actually think that's quite an interesting one because it is something that we do as well.
Yeah.
But usually only for larger corporate team events. So if a company is holding some kind of event, then they'd ask us whether we'd be available to be on site. And right, we have a reason, probably not as elegant as the as the mobile setup that pulled up at your search, but we have a reasonably mobile setup that we can use. And I think the one, I think it's a really good additional service to offer, just because you are able to charge a premium for it from an arcade perspective. And just from a commercial standpoint, the tricky part is actually finding the right price point with each customer, depending on how long the event is, how far away it is, what they kind of expect you to build up. And that's something that I think we had yeah, we needed a couple tries until we got it right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we often actually underpriced ourselves for the services that we did. I can see Chun nodding because I know that, like, the reason Chun is nodding is because he and I have had a lot of work because I thought something was a good idea at a low price, and it
Yeah, I
probably
mean, you don't know how much hard work there's behind the stuff before you do it. So at the beginning, we were like, yeah, maybe it's just like half of our work or 1 hour work. So yeah, easy peasy. And then you start, and then you're like, okay, this is not working, and we still have to set up this, and we need help with that. And then you're like, okay, we're 2 hours in. We thought we were finished like an hour ago, and we have like 2 hours in front of us still. And then you realize, okay, setting up something mobile is really, really hard to do, and so much work goes into it. And as Rollo mentioned, first we didn't make a lot of money because of that, and then we kind of found ourselves and said, okay, we need that many hours to set it up correctly.
Yeah.
We need so and so many people, and that just comes with experience, right? You cannot know this when you don't do it. So yeah,
Was it?
glad that
Go on, sorry.
I'm just glad that we are now set on a price that we can agree on and not sell it for too cheap.
Yeah. Was it like just laptops you used and like Quest 2s or?
I mean, we have the backpack PCs in
Yeah.
our arena in Zurich, and so we moved out everything: the backpack PCs, the headsets, the controllers, all the charging stations, all the batteries, all the lighthouses, because we have still the outside-in tracking, and so it is so much stuff that gets carried over to the new location, and then you have to set it up there. So, and then when you're finished and you come back, you're like, okay, done for today. But then you come back in the next day and you're like, oh no, there's still so much work. And Roland is laughing, yes, sure, but
it's a feeling where this 1.5 hour event that we probably sold too cheap. We objectively sold it too cheaply. Turned into a full day event for 4 people, and you come back to the arena just completely exhausted from everything, and you notice that there's a game the next day in the early afternoon. So it's 10 p.m. and you start to just build back everything and test everything to make sure that it still works for the next day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was.
Sounds like fun.
yeah, it definitely was. We recommend it. 10 out of 10 experience.
Sounds like a learning experience, I guess. Yeah, it's what I'd go with as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a ton of questions. I will get to your questions at the end, everyone. I did do a poll asking my viewers if they've ever experienced a VR arcade, and there's about 20 people watching, and it's 50-50. Surprising. I didn't think that many people would have.
Yep, surprising for me as well.
No.
I think it would be curious to. Did going to VR arcade motivate you to get a VR headset, or did you have a VR headset already and you want to try something different in a VR arcade, and that's why you went? I think that would be really interesting to know.
Type in the comments, everyone. You heard Roland's question. I'll read them out as they come through. Yeah.
Sure. Right. Back to where we were on the hardware topic, Chan. Right. So what we chose now for the second location that we opened up was a combination of Vive Focus 3s together with really strong desktop PCs. I think it's pretty good middle ground in being able to offer a more comfortable customer experience just because you don't need to carry around the backpack, especially for our younger guests. That was always a huge thing, that if you have someone who's 8-year-old carrying a backpack, it gets really heavy for them really quickly. So I'm actually quite a fan. I know, Chan, what other, so let's say you'd be opening a brand new arcade, what are the headsets that you'd consider, and which ones wouldn't you consider, and why?
I mean, now that we have both the backpack PC setup and also the streaming setup, I would definitely go for the streaming setup. And as you mentioned, the backpacks, they might be great, but for younger people, for let's say lighter people, it's always so much to carry around, and you cannot enjoy yourself all the time. After half an hour, 40 minutes, you really get exhausted, and you're like, okay, when is it going to finish? I don't want to stop here with the team, but I want to carry on, but it now gets a little bit too heavy. I need to stop. I need my break. So that's annoying. And also for the game masters, I mean, we need to clean up everything after a session so that the next group have a clean set of backpack PCs, headsets, and whatever that they can use. So it's also a lot more work than just with the streaming headsets, I guess. And because of that, and because it's lighter and it's just so much quicker to set up everything, I would definitely go with the streaming setup that we have now in our second arcade.
Yeah.
And what's the average weight of these backpacks?
I mean, you can imagine that you have a desktop on your back, so like 6-7 kilograms, something like that.
Yeah.
I think it's more around 4 or 5, but
No.
significant enough that you notice. And then
You know,
on top
bro,
of that-
you're lifting, you're strong, so that's why you don't know how heavy these things are. But I think they're more on the 6 kilogram side, but not sure.
I mean, I think what adds to it is that especially in the summer, they get quite warm. So not only are you carrying around a backpack, you're also carrying around a backpack that's just eating your back the entire time, which I just don't think is particularly comfortable.
Nice. I just had Adam join, who I've been talking on the phone to. He works at a VR arcade, and I've been chatting to him for a few weeks now, going back and forth. And I mentioned this podcast to him, so thanks for joining, Adam. Good to see you here, mate.
Hey, Adam.
Is there anything any more to do with the different hardware that you want to discuss?
I mean, I think a last point worth mentioning to why we actually went with the Vive Focus 3s is for free roam, you're able to do map sharing, which means that you can have multiple headsets in the same space that are aware of where they are respective to each other, which you need to be able to have free roam games. But, and this is kind of the but, it seems, and I haven't kind of tested this myself, but it looks like there's also a software available for the Oculus Quest, which allows you to have multiple quests in the same play area that does the same. Because I think we actually weren't sure if we were going to go with the Quest or the Focus 3, and in the end we decided for the Focus 3 just because we thought it had a, I don't know, kind of nicer feel to it, just overall as a headset versus the Quest 2.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about the Quest 2 is it's a great headset for starters, right? But if you want to carry that one around for an hour, it also is front heavy, so it's not really that comfortable on your face for an hour. And you either need some other elite straps or something like that, which is, again, costly and a little bit expensive, or you just settle for a headset that has it all. And that was also a consideration why we chose the Vive Focus over the Quest 2.
Okay. Anything else you guys would like to talk about with regards to?
No, I think.
Should we open the floodgates for the questions?
You mentioned there were a couple questions.
Yeah. So okay. So if you have a question, now is the time in chat. So if you just drop the questions in there, that'd be great, and then we'll try and answer them as best as we can. There's been quite a few, just like. There we go. So, Slow Coach asked, are the rooms all green? I think he means by a green screen, I guess. But no, they tend to be, unless they're actually looking to do some kind of capture. Where are these arcades available? All over. Just do
pretty much.
do a Google VR arcades near me. There's a few Tranquility if you ever come down. There is a couple that aren't too far from here, but I'm sure there's some where you are. There's plenty of yeah.
There's a really cool one in London actually, where the points that you earn in the game translates to credits for drinks that you're able to pour yourself afterwards. So you get this point card that gets charged up with the points you earned in the game, and you get not a significant but a small discount on a beer that you want to buy. And I think it's a pretty cool concept.
No, that is a cool idea. That is a cool idea. Is that integrated into all the games or just certain games, or?
I don't remember exactly.
Yeah.
I think they integrated it into all their games in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Okay. Go on, Jan.
Rafitza from our VRilliant YouTube channel is asking, is Vive Focus 3 the only headset that supports location sharing? I think to my knowledge, no. We had the example with the Quest 2.
I think the Quest does as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that one does it as well. But other than these two, I think we don't have. I mean, for Pico 4, we don't have map sharing, as far as I know.
But I'm convinced they're also working on it. I mean,
Yeah.
right? If you envision sort of VR esports at a large scale, which I think I'm convinced is going to be a thing. I think the question is only when. I'm convinced they're working on it.
Yeah.
Somebody.
And VR esports would be great.
Okay, so Luzak Blade asks, what is your energy bill? I bet it's hard to run a VR arcade.
So what is I didn't catch the first part.
What is your energy bill like running a VR arcade?
Yes, so we do. I mean, I'm not sure how it's sorted in other countries, but I guess in Switzerland the way it works is that you always pay sort of a standard amount every month for utilities.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the year you get the overall utility bill to what you actually owe. And unsurprisingly, we have not been under what we've paid in so far. But to be fair, it hasn't been completely insane either. So it's actually quite. It's been okay.
Yeah. And then we've got Googly Games said, with VR arcades, is it usually located in a warehouse space or larger play spaces? It varies, doesn't it, depending if they got free roam or room scale. So room scale, you just need a couple of meters, right? You don't need per pod. You don't need a lot of space. Some places are huge, aren't they? Like the one you mentioned in France. What was that called again? Was it France? You said it's like
EVA.
Yeah.
EVA words.
Have you been there?
No, but I mean, from just from a commercial standpoint, right? One of your major fixed costs is going to be your rent, which means, right, what you're optimizing for is basically where can you have the largest possible space in the most central location possible, for the lowest possible price. So that's kind of the triangle that you're looking at.
Yeah.
And usually this is going to be a bit on the outskirts, so more on in industrial areas that were built just probably a bit later than any kind of older city center.
Yeah.
And what also plays a big role here is that the space that you need, it can't have any pillars in between the play spaces that you want to create. Otherwise, you have people running into them. So that's another really important factor that you have to look for there.
Yeah, yeah. We have Zenquility saying, so you guys own a VR arcade in Switzerland only, and are you looking to expand?
So for now, we're definitely only in Switzerland. We just expanded to a second city in Switzerland. But a lot of our focus is actually on the software development side. When it comes to, some of you might know, Rotten Apple, and sort of developing VR games is kind of also where the other part of our passion is.
Yeah. Okay.
Two things on my side by me, Mr. Search.
Sorry.
So first of all, is if EVA or EVA or whatever they call it is listening, we are open for invitations. So We would like to check you guys out if you want to write us. I would be really curious into this VR esports kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the second thing is that Synthesis VR wrote in our chat that Pico 4 Enterprise has a map sharing. And that's pretty cool. And we also had the topic this morning, right, Roland? With no, that was on Monday, with Laszlo mentioning the Pico 4 Enterprise thing that I do not know of, but I think he has more knowledge on that front.
Yeah. I'll ask them tomorrow. I'll be going there tomorrow. To Pico HQ, let's see what they say. If you've got any questions. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's it for the questions, to be honest. Yeah, from my side. There were loads as we were talking, and yeah, I couldn't answer them all, but I think that's everything. Yeah. Yeah, do you have any more questions on your side? Is that everyone?
No, I think we're all right. Right, we originally planned an hour. We're already at an hour into.
Yeah. Oh, okay. We've got one last question before we wrap up.
Sure.
So we've got Luzak Blade. I bet you have to insure your equipment for damage. How often do people damage your equipment?
It's been okay, but I'm going to let Shun answer this. Otherwise, he'll take my head off for saying something that's wrong.
Yes, I will. I mean, little damages happen every now and then.
Yeah.
So we just had a strap that got loose, or just broke from the rest, or some other things that do not work anymore. But hardware-wise, the backpack pieces are still in one piece. The headsets also, so we didn't have larger damages, but a few things every here and then that happens. And also what I really recognize this year is the controllers. After 2 years of using them, quite often they tend to break with the trigger buttons and stuff. So yeah, I think that's the biggest damage that we have, the controllers that got used every day.
Yeah. And somebody, I'm just going to word it. Okay, somebody asked, have you ever had to clean up vomit from a player?
Thankfully not, no.
Yeah.
I mean, usually people just take off their headsets when they feel nausea, right? It doesn't go as far that they puke and yeah, but no, we hadn't had that experience, thank God.
Okay, and then Wolveraz asking, what do you do when you run into someone who has motion sickness?
We take them out. So generally the advice that we have is, because what people would want to do most of the time is to push through it, but that really doesn't work. It just gets worse and worse and worse. So we take them out, tell them to take a seat, offer them something to drink, tell them that it's gonna pass in latest a couple of hours, but that's usually how we handle it.
Yeah, definitely take them out of the games. Give them something to drink, to eat if you have, and otherwise let them watch on the Game Master PC so that they actually see what the others are doing.
Yeah, I mean, just show them what they're missing out on. That'll make them feel better.
The idea would be to show them what they're not missing, because they're watching. But yeah, thank you, Serge. Yeah, thanks for putting it into that light. So.
Okay, this is the last question, okay? And then we're wrapping up. So, Silver Tongue Devil, I don't know if it's been mentioned, but do any of the headset manufacturers offer much in the way of support for the VR arcades?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily. Not that we've seen.
Okay.
I don't know if Roland has other experiences, but on my side, I mean, we had contact with Vive with the Vive Focus 3 headsets, and then they had representatives here in Switzerland, so we just got shipped there and had contact with them, so not directly with the companies.
Right. Okay. What's the most amount of players that you've seen in a game, like that a game can handle in a VR arcade that you've heard of? I mean, I've heard of 8 players, or 8, I think it was, but I'm sure there's more. Do you know of any number higher than that?
I mean, I think you probably have some kind of normal distribution where most games can probably handle around 4 to 6 players, and then
Yeah.
you have a couple that can still handle 8 players, and then very few that can still handle more than that.
Yeah.
At least for an arcade setting. I mean, exceptions then are, I guess you have a couple of games on the Quest 2 which are PvP games where you then have larger teams playing against each other. But generally, PvP doesn't work particularly well in arcades simply because the people come as a team and they usually want to play as a team together.
Yeah, that's our experience, right? When people come for the first time, they don't want to like compete with each other.
Yeah.
But I think the games that handle 8 players or even more would be competitive games, right? That the games that we also know from the desktop games. But team-wise, I don't think that there is a game with a larger group than 6.
Right. Okay.
No, there are.
I don't know.
There definitely are, but I don't know the names
Also
off the
team
top of my head.
games?
Yep. I
Okay.
think it was actually team games. Sort of up to 8, 10 players, yeah.
I can imagine it being pretty chaotic when you have 8 or 10 players
Oh,
in the same team. and-
definitely.
yeah,
You just need to embrace it at that point.
just go with the flow.
Okay, so everyone in my chat, I am dropping the VRilliant channel in the description. Subscribe to them because they will have updates and obviously be streaming. We'll be doing this bi-weekly, I believe, doing the arcade podcast. So yeah, show your support, subscribe to VRilliant. Thank you all for watching as well. It's been a great turnout, actually. Great turnout. Really appreciate all of you. And thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you, Serge, for being such a cool host.
Yes.
No, I'm more than happy to do it. It's been fun. It's good. It's great because most people watching won't have a clue about VR arcade and how it works. So I think it's been an educational experience for a lot of people and even myself. So yeah.
Really cool.
Perfect. Well, thanks everyone for joining our stream. Thanks everyone for dropping by to say hi.
Yeah.
Bye, Elena. Bye.
We'll see you. We'll see you all in a next couple of weeks. We'll schedule another one. Leave your feedback in the comments. What you think of this podcast, and if you'd like to see more. If you have any more questions, we'll get around to answering them. Until then, see you next time. See you later.
Thanks everyone.
Cheers, guys.
See
Bye.
you. Bye bye.